Welcome to the Upfront Podcast, where you get your weekly dose of upfront discussions with people from all around the world. My guest today is Lauren Adilev, who is originally from the United States and relocated to Israel in the 80s. She's a single mom of two, living in Efrat in the Gush Etzion region, and runs two businesses, a boutique content agency and a home life organization service, where she helps people declutter and downsize their life. We are speaking about raising kids as a single parent in a religious environment, how she ensures she's taking care of herself and her mental health, and what her take on minimalism and downsizing is. You can find her contact information in the show notes. This is a content warning. Please be aware that this episode contains topics that some listeners may find difficult to listen to. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, Nina. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Thank God. Good.
It's so great to having this week's episode. So please tell me a bit about who you are.
Okay. So my name is Lauren Adilev, and somehow I found myself at the age of 54. I didn't realize I'd get here. And I'm from the States originally. I lived in several different places. I had different internships and different work opportunities. And I first came to Israel in the 80s and was here for a few years in the early 90s. Went back to the States to refresh and also to help take care of my grandmother in her old age. She passed away many years ago, but I was there in her final years. And then I came back to Israel in 96, and I've been here since then. I've worked mostly in sales and marketing for different publications. And then I spun off from that into becoming a writer. So I have a boutique content agency. It's called Turn Right with a W this way. So it's Turn Right This Way. And I develop biographies of private individuals, such as Shoah survivors, and two biographies featured men who had been soldiers in World War II. One was on the beach of Normandy at the invasion. And I also develop a lot of marketing materials, fundraising brochures, grant applications. A lot of people turn to me for a resume refresh when they're looking for a new job. And I also publish occasionally in the Jerusalem Report and the London Jewish Chronicle. That's one business. And my other business is called Clutter's Last Stand. I help people declutter, and as they find more physical space, they also find more emotional space, and they're also calmer, and then they can pay more attention to their finances. And I specialize in helping people who add a new addition to the family, either a baby, or it could be that they've decided to help the foster care system, children in foster care, and they need to set up a bright, welcoming space for these children. And I also help a lot of people who are in their mid-60s to downsize, because in your mid-60s, you must downsize. You must be in an apartment that's safe and accessible that you can age in. So those are my two businesses. And I also have two children. Mira just turned 19 tonight. She is in Shibut Leumi doing national service at Shalva, which is a national center for children with Down syndrome and other cognitive disabilities. And Naftali is 14, and he's in a boarding school up north near Haifa.
Wow, that's quite the story.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. How has your life changed since you've had kids?
Well, the thing is this, a lot of people say to me, where did you grow up? And of course, I grew up in the States. But I say to them, I really have only grown up since I've had kids. I come from a very abusive background. There was a lot of abuse, a lot of neglect, And I basically have been on my own since I was 15. I really, in a way, was addicted to irresponsibility. I really bounced around for a long time. Some people in this situation might become settled very early. And for me, it just sparked a need to just go from job to job and place to place and different opportunities. Definitely not healthy. So I think that having kids, it has healed me. On one hand, I can say that I do feel bad that I wasn't 100% emotionally sound when I had my kids, but I did know that I wanted to be different. I wanted to give my kids a very secure childhood. And I think that I have. They're very self-confident. They have friends. They enjoy school. They're not into all kinds of craziness. So I feel that having kids really grounded me. So we also have a lot of fun together, a lot of laughs. And it's also because I've chosen to be religious. Kids are a big part of having a religious life. And it's really been a joy to be a parent.
So you think you kind of grown into the job, like
Yeah,
into that role on the job, sort of?
absolutely. And
Mm.
I think I am doing a good job because, for example, Mira right now is in a bit of a tug of war with her father. He expects her to come every 2 weeks for Shabbat. Now, before, when there was a custodial agreement, she needed to. She was expected to, but she's 19. That's done.
Right.
I don't think he understands that she could get married next week. She could come home and she could give me a call and say, "Hey, guess what? I got married today." That's her right, and I know that she feels good that I'm not clingy. She appreciates that I see her, that she's a whole person, that she's an independent person, and that I trust her, and that I trust that she knows how to take care of herself.
So custodial agreements only are valid only until the child reaches the legal mature age of 18
Right.
then.
Of 18.
Okay.
Right. That's correct. That's correct. But I do have to say that really a teen, even from 13, 14, you can't rope them in, and you shouldn't. That just really would make them resentful. So you have to let go, or else it really creates a lot of resentment.
I guess especially at that age, right, where you have
Mhm.
that like rebellious phase in your teenage years and
Yeah.
mm,
I would say that they have not rebelled.
mm,
I'm not saying that there's no struggles. I think that struggles are important. You have to have dilemmas because dilemmas teach you how to grow. But thank God there's no drugs, no alcohol, no smoking. Their friends are healthy friends, good friends. Those are really important. They're important factors because you want your child to be healthy. It's really, really crucial.
yeah, of course. I think that is every parent's sort of ultimate goal or should be, right?
Mhm.
What do you think
Absolutely.
a person without kids or just who doesn't have kids, what does such a person not get to see about being like a single parent? I could imagine it being quite stressful, especially in your case, for example, with like handling two businesses, two kids, being a single parent, and handling all of that. That is a lot. Like maybe I don't get to see certain facets of what it is really like.
I think it's not so much that people without kids don't understand my struggles. It's people with a husband, with kids. If you have a supportive partner, that's truly amazing. I really didn't have that with my ex-husband, which is why one of the reasons I got divorced. He was just not willing to be there. No, you can't really say 50% of the time, all the time, but at least
Mm,
be there. He chose to work a job that was afternoon to evening hours. So he wasn't around most of the week. And I was in grad school 1 year, and it was really difficult. It is hard. For example, there are certain medical appointments that I need to make. I have some health problems, and it's really hard to find the time to actually pick up the phone, to call the doctor, especially because you need to go through so many hoops to make an appointment with a specialist. That's what's really difficult today. As I said, I took my car to be tested, and I was just thinking, no sane woman would do the job that these men are doing. Where you're in sort of this covered area, and you have one man down in a pit, and I'm always afraid I'm going to decapitate him as he's checking my car. And you have these guys screaming at you, brakes, 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 and turn the wheel. And I can't understand what they're saying because there's so much noise. So this guy just comes over to my car and turns it, and then they say, back up, stop, go forward, die, enough. I mean, I don't mind doing it, but it'd be so great if I could just hand the keys to a guy and say, hubby, go do this. And I also joke in Tel Aviv, there are these magazines and hotels, and they have certain services listed, which I'm not even sure that they're legal. And sometimes I just feel like calling them and saying, no, I don't want that. I need help with Pesach. That's what's really difficult. Pesach, and because there's a lot of errands. It's hard. It's hard. It's just, there's really no way to sugarcoat it. It definitely is difficult. Things are becoming easier because most of the kids are out of the house, but I really enjoy it when they come home on Thursday evenings, and all of a sudden there's all this noise, and it's a little bit hard to adjust to, but I really do enjoy seeing them on the weekends.
I can picture what you mean about like simply having like a second person to take care of all of these things together.
Yeah.
So as a single mom, I'm sure your time is pretty limited, even more so than if it's like two parents taking care of everything. How do you ensure, or how did you ensure in the past that you still took care of yourself and your mental health?
One thing I did is I went out in the evenings to different concerts, different lectures. Also, something I did for myself was I studied grief therapy for 3 years. And I found the sessions to be really fascinating. And I've used the tools that I learned there, both in my writing, especially when, for example, I had to interview a father whose son was murdered in the Parkland High School massacre 4 years ago. And also when I'm helping people declutter, especially if somebody has had a home for 30, 40 years and they're in their mid 60s and they have to really declutter, really get rid of things. So I used to really find different little events in my community in the evening. And it was a lot of babysitters and a lot of coordinating. And the kids sometimes mention it, you were gone a lot. And they think that I was, but I really wasn't. It was maybe once every 3 weeks or something like that. Even now I have a close group of friends, and I get together with one friend every week for coffee. I just try to connect with people. I really try to find different venues. I feel that every opportunity that I have to learn something, I want to take it. I just like to keep learning and keep growing.
So I do have to ask you, since you've been in Israel for 30 years, because there's a lot of new immigrants that do leave within the first couple of years of coming to Israel. What made you stay?
I can say it was just an utter disaster. I couldn't find work at that time in the 90s. even to be a barista in a coffee shop, they wanted you to have a bachelor's degree.
Was that
That
in Israel or in the
No,
States?
this was in the States. And
Hmm.
also, I have to say that I feel like I don't have a soul when I'm in the States. I'm actually going to the States in a couple of weeks and I'm excited about it, but I really had to force myself to call the travel agent. I've sort of grown into Israel. It does take time. I would say it took me 20 years to really feel comfortable. Things are not perfect. I definitely have financial difficulties. And I have to say, I do get upset when I see on Facebook someone saying, well, I have $5. When should I come to Israel? And I tell people, really don't come to Israel until you have at least $25,000 in the bank. That is, if you're single, and to have some kind of paramedical training or computer training so that when you come here, you can have a job or you can make Aliyah with a laptop and get settled and open it up and go to work right away. Because finances, it really takes a chunk out here. I've really seen the food prices skyrocket here. It's really difficult. Thank God we do have excellent health care here and it is subsidized, but you really have to want to be here. My daughter actually thanked me a few times while she was in high school. She thanked me for making Aliyah because she had such a good experience in high school. Also, I
Mm.
have to say that the violence in the States is so scary. I'm really happy that I'm here.
That is actually interesting that you just referred to that because I wanted to point out that you do live in what is sometimes referred to as a settlement, which is in the
Mhm.
West Bank,
Yeah.
but it is recognized as like the ancestral, historical Samaria and Judea region by
Mhm.
some Jews and Israelis alike.
Mhm.
But I don't really want to make this about politics. Around the settlements, because that is a very complex topic to discuss
Yeah.
in this episode, I think.
Right.
What made you move there in the first place? Or weren't you worried about like safety issues?
Well, I have to say that regarding safety, in about an hour and a half, I'm going to a lecture in memory of Avraham David Moses. My friend Rivka Moriah is his mother. Avraham David was murdered at Merkaz Harav 14 years ago. It was actually March 6, 2008. My friend Rina Ariel, who lives in Kiryat Arba, her daughter Hallel was stabbed to death in her bed 5 years ago. I was actually on Beit El, which is really north of Jerusalem. Now I'm south of Jerusalem. And I was there during the 2000 war. In the 2000 war, it really showed that there was no secure place because there was a murder at a supermarket. You never knew which bus you took, if there was somebody on it who was going to blow it up. I don't want to stay here the rest of my life. I'm hoping to move up north in a couple of years. I think safety really is an illusion. I mean, what can I say? My neighbor up the street, Ari Fold, he was murdered 3 years ago. An Arab youth who was, I think, 17, was trained where to stab somebody in the neck, and he stabbed Ari to death with one blow. You really just have to be cautious. I mean, wherever you go, really, wherever you are, you could be in the most rural area and something could happen. As I said, Max Schachter, he said goodbye to his son Alex one morning, and this is in Florida. And Alex went to school when he was murdered a couple of hours later. You just don't know.
Hmm.
So,
I do feel like though in like the West Bank and the settlements, you're much closer to potential danger.
well, we have a armed defense force here in Efrat that's always on alert. There
Mm.
are soldiers at Gush, but I have a good connection with certain Arabs, like at the garage. I'm really not afraid. It's actually, really, it's funny. It's not even, stabbings or bombings that's a concern. It's the way the Arabs drive on the main highway here. They sort of paraglide across the highway. That's more of a concern. But for example, I have a friend, and a couple of years ago, her husband's nephew was in a fula, and some Arab tried to run him over. I mean, there, a fula, you're in the you're in the middle of
Mm.
nowhere. All I can say is that wherever I go, I'm just very cautious. You have to be alert.
What was it like for you guys during the last round of attacks? I'm not sure whether you've actually experienced that as much as we did in Tel Aviv and obviously the south of Israel, like
Yeah,
Ashdod and Ashkelon and those cities.
I really can't even remember. But it's funny because a couple of weeks ago, a siren went off, and they were actually testing the siren, and I didn't know that they were testing the siren. I was like, "Oh, we're at war. Okay, it's just fine. It's.
Hmm.
I mean, for me, as long as I can get my coffee, get my milk, and I have my hot shower once a day, I'm good.
So you
I
just
don't
need
need.
a coffee, a maker, and a shower in the bunker, then, and then you're fine.
Right,
Pretty
exactly,
much. Mm.
exactly. In 2015, when the Arabs were lighting fires all over the place, I was actually living in Neve Daniel, and we got a notice that we might need to evacuate. And I was like, okay, I've got a packet of coffee, a little thing of milk, my cheese puffs, and my laptop. So I'm good, ready to go.
The
And
essentials.
I think
Yeah.
that you really have to have a sense of humor. That's really
Mm.
all you can do.
So, what specifically brought you to the idea of minimalism?
It's interesting, as I mentioned, when I made Aliyah, homes here in Israel were small. A three-bedroom home was considered a large home. A three-bedroom apartment, I should say. There were, sure, there were some private small houses on kibbutzim. There were a couple of exclusive neighborhoods near Tel Aviv, but just, moving to Efrat and seeing some of the homes here, and also when I got divorced 8 years ago, I I had to move, and it took me forever to clean out and pack a three-bedroom home, and it was just all this stuff, and I didn't know where it was coming from. And then I had to pack again 2 years later, and I just said, I just don't want it. I realize that I feel better when I have a lot less stuff, and I just feel more open and calm. And I found that since I started decluttering, that it's really enabled me to think more about my finances. And I look around now, as I said, at some of the homes, and I was in the post office last week here in the front, and it was overloaded with packages from Amazon. And yeah, people might need this or that, but I think that people now buy all kinds of things that they just don't need just because it's there. And a lot of these things are made very poorly. They're going
Hmm.
to break, and then they just go into a landfill. For example, I just helped a client declutter from a two-floor, four-bedroom apartment to a very small two-bedroom apartment, and we had to give a lot of stuff away to charity. But I know that she feels better now that she's moved and she's settled into an apartment that's easier for her. It's more accessible in that it has an elevator to the street. Before, she had to walk up 30 steps. And she told me, when I helped her get rid of about 1,000 books on quilting, she called me and she said, I feel so much lighter. and I feel so much brighter and amazing.
What do you personally go by? Do you do the Marie Kondo, whatever
Well,
sparks joy?
something might be important to you that doesn't spark joy. I think that you do have to decide what you want to keep. So I decided when I thought about it and I said, okay, I want to keep my journals, my kids, self-love, and my mind, and everything else can go. So, for example, yes, I do have about 50 books that I really love and I do want to hold on to, but otherwise, you just don't need it. That's one of my mottos. You just don't need it. Even today, for example, photos, everything can be digital. And you get, let's say that you have 10 albums, that's all you need because you just don't need it. I know that if I had to move tomorrow, it would only take about 6 hours to move. And that really feels good. It feels good to know that I just don't have the stuff. And it just feels great. It just feels really amazing when you're just not tied down to stuff.
The KonMari method personally really helped me. But I do think that is kind of lacking a bit in that sense that there is stuff that you need that
Right.
doesn't necessarily spark joy or add like that kind of value to your life. Like your microwave doesn't spark joy, but you
Mhm.
kind of like maybe use it a lot, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah, I think it has to be sort of a combination of the two. Do you
Right.
personally, for your own life, do you go by downsizing to a certain number of items?
I wouldn't say that I do that because, well, in clothing, I actually don't have a lot of clothes. I don't need a lot because I work from home. So I really just sort of throw something on in the morning and I have a 30-second commute to my couch. Also, it's I really don't like buying clothes made in China, and I'm not so comfortable with that. 20 years ago, you needed CDs, but now everything's on YouTube. So if I want to listen to something, I just go onto YouTube. I really love different types of magazines, and so I might have a pile of magazines, but not over a month. I finish reading it, and then I just pass it on. In terms of let's say, well, shoes. I actually do need another couple of pair, but I haven't had time. And my kids, they never had a collection of anything, which is fantastic. So I have to tell you that there's a book in my hallway and it's something that my son got from a bus stop. And he is going to take it there this weekend before he leaves because I don't want it in my house because it's an extra and I don't want it here.
Mm.
Also, I have to say that I cleaned up a corner a few weeks ago and I found two sleeping bags. Next week, I'm going to be near a boarding school for children who are from troubled homes. So I'm going to see if I can donate these extra sleeping bags. My son also gave up some books recently, so I'm going to donate these. And it's really a pleasure to pass something on.
What tips do you usually offer to your clients? Is there anything like a secret recipe that you could share with us?
Well, I tell them that really, especially in their mid 60s, when they pass, you don't want to force, and I have to say it's usually the daughter who ends up, at the age of 60 going through her elderly parents' things when they pass on. You don't want them to need to take the time. And you are going to feel so much better if you create an environment that's really pleasant and it's almost like a hotel room and you feel really special living in a small neat space. Really think about having really pleasant environment surrounded only by a very few objects that you love so that you know that when you pass on you're not going to leave your stuff to be a burden for your kids.
if only for that reason, to reflect upon one's own behavior when it comes to how much we consume,
Mhm.
how much do we actually need? Do we need to fill our lives with materialistic goods instead of memories or whatever it may be? What do you recommend for parents and also single parents who want to declutter and downsize? Because I feel like with kids, that might be sort of an additional step to take, right?
Right. Well, I really advise parents. A lot of people have way too many toys, and I think that having too many toys stifles a kid's imagination. You need, for example, what's really good to have is a doll house with furniture, and they can use their imagination to create all kinds of little home scenes. And you need a good art kit, like a lot of crayons and paper, but don't buy coloring books, and don't buy sets with beads. Beads are the absolute worst. And I would also say, don't buy puzzles. Someone told me, oh, they need puzzles to learn hand-eye coordination. And I always said, they have puzzles in the kindergarten. They'll get hand-eye coordination there. I don't want puzzles at home. So I found that my kids, because they had very few things, I'm not saying that they were deprived, but we didn't have a lot, and they would make little shadow puppet plays, and they did all kinds of things that were really, really cute. And I think that's really helped them in their overall development. Also, I think it's very important you have a schedule of cleaning, and that you also involve the kids. Have a schedule, if possible, every Thursday night. It could be together, even from the age of 2. You can, the kid can help you take off the sheet from the bed, and you walk it together to the washing machine, and then you put on a clean sheet and a clean pillowcase. And you also make sure that as soon as your kid outgrows clothes, just pass them on. I mean, yes, of course, if you're planning on having a big family, to keep a few things, but don't keep, so many. I remember one woman, when Ira was young, she said, I have these baby clothes, and a lot of the clothes were stained, or they had these weird designs or something like that. You have to trust that when you need to buy something, you'll be able to buy it. So don't worry. Save a little bit. It might be practical to save an item like a snowsuit, but don't save everything, and really have a routine of cleaning and also of cooking, so that you aren't always relying on takeout pizza.
Many kids nowadays, I feel like, seem to be brought up with like a smartphone pretty
Hmm.
much constantly glued to their hand.
Yeah.
And if you do let this happen, this could severely impact, I feel like, their social and communication abilities. But if you try to shield them from all of that, then they might get bullied in school or lag behind in like
Mhm.
technological advancement and stuff like that.
Mhm.
How could parents, in your opinion, downsize or lead a more minimalist life whilst including their kids in such like decisions and
Mhm.
not having to like constantly deny them?
I think it's, limits. And I think that, for example, we never had a television, but we would occasionally watch some type of movie. My kids do have smartphones. Um, you do need a phone, um, really, from the age of 12, when kids are in junior high and they're moving around quite a bit. But luckily, my kids are not into social media at all, and they have friends. And I think it's important also for parents to to get off their phones and to be with the kids. I mean, I always took my kids to the park, to the library. In the summer, we went to museums. Just don't stick a phone into your 4-year-old's hand. And just really have a lot of reading time with your kids and really emphasize language with your kids. I think that's the most important thing you can do.
Thank you so much for doing this, Lauren. It
Good.
was really insightful.
Good. Well, I do appreciate this chance to speak to people. I really have, I guess you could say, the decluttering bug. I really do love it. And I can promise people you will feel amazing when you declutter, even space by space. And it does take time. And it has taken me a very long time to to get there. It doesn't happen overnight. And that's okay.
Mm.
You have to forgive yourself, especially because when kids are young, usually you're just in survival mode. You're not in decluttering mode. So
Right.
as your kids get older, you look around and you say, what is that? It truly is amazing. And everyone is welcome to contact me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Upfront Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss out on any new episodes. We will be back next week.